Chapter 4, Part 11. The interface atop Solugarmon's head unleashed the true, creative potential of their Digicore. They dropped to all fours, assuming their wolven form once more. The remnants of Gleipnir hung loose around its neck. "Are you ready for the fires of hell?" Fenrir Lugamon growled as it emerged from the Digivolution's glow. The flames that covered its body burned pale blue, reaching tens of thousands degrees of Kelvin, equivalent to the surface temperature of the hottest stars in the Milky Way. Nevertheless, Fenrir Lugamon was able to perfectly contain the massive amounts of energy roiling within. "Here I am, Professor. Finally powerful enough to join your elite club," Eiji said as Fenrir Lugamon squared up to Dodogoramon. Eiji's bond with Lugamon deepened, their complete and total allegiance to one another allowing them to unlock Lugamon's megaform. The demon wolf, the hellhound prophesied to devour the god of gods, was finally free. They could not be slain, only contained. It was all the gods could do to contain the beast with Gleipnir, the enchanted dwarven restraints. "Slow and steady wins the race, is that it?" Professor Ryusenji said with delight. "I have nothing but admiration for you two. There are many paths to mega level, but I never expected your desire to save Leon and Pulsmon alone to be the thing that did it. To be so young. Let me guess, your friends are just that important to you?" "And yours?" Eiji shot back. It was time to take the flight to Professor Ryusenji. After a certain age, it can be healthier to protect yourself from harmful relationships with a bit of distance. You learn to keep those who are useful to you close, while discarding those for whom you have no need. Hey, that actually makes sense." "Do you mean that?" "I sure do. Which is why I'm going to discard you right here and now, Ryusenji," Eiji said resolutely. The professor took a moment to think. "You win that round. 1 point for you. I'll pay you a nice fat bonus. Orders of magnitude over your normal pay." "Orders of magnitude?" "Snap out of it, Eiji! You're not for sale!" Fenrir Lugamon shouted at Eiji from within the Digicore. "I wasn't seriously considering it. I don't need any extra money." Eiji shook his head and checked his virtual monitor to see how long they could remain mind-linked in this state. "We're gonna go all in from the start. I want you running at full strength." Fenrir Lugamon leapt into the air, unleashing an unholy roar that shook the source domain. They were the beast prophesied to destroy this world and birth the next, and they let Professor Ryusenji hear it. It was majestic and awe-inspiring, like watching a star explode. "Ragnarok Owling!" Yulin looked on from the stone circle as Eiji and Fenrir Lugamon charged into battle. The stone pillars and slabs looked sturdy enough to keep her safe from any stray projectiles that came in contact with them, but the haphazard way they were thrown together left much to be desired in terms of actual cover. Better than standing out in the open, certainly, but not entirely safe. This was where the Tyrannomon charged with getting her and Ryudamon to safety, deposited the two of them, and it would have to do. Another Tyrannomon carefully lowered Pulsmon and the Black Agumon to the ground nearby. Even in the midst of battle, Eiji took the time to figure out how to get everyone else to safety using the Digimon in his dock. The third and final Tyrannomon limped into view, favoring its wounded shoulder and carrying something on its back. "Kosuke," Yulin said, as he came into view from behind the Tyrannomon. He hopped down to the ground, gave the Tyrannomon a pat, and staggered past Yulin toward the Black Agumon. "Forgive me." Kosuke said weakly as he passed by. I see now. You weren't warning me about interfering with the source domain, but with Professor Ryusenji. What's that in your hand? Yulin asked, her eyes drawn to Kosuke's closest fist. I'm here to put an end to it all, sire. At least I'll be the one to do it, he said, reaching the syringe out toward the black Agumon. The Digimon stared back at him. I can't hear Dorugoramon's voice anymore. The professor, he's taken everything from me. If only I could have brought you back. He'd lost in the game of life. He was without hope. Look at me, Kosuke, Yulin said sternly. Let's see what Eiji and his Fenri Lugamon can do. The fiery demon wolf burned a pale blue at the far end of the stone circle. The hellfire risked searing the eyes of anyone who looked directly at it. Concentric circles of plasma heated to tens of thousands of degrees Kelvin radiated out from Fenri Lugamon. With a powerful owl, the rings shot out toward Dorugoramon, creating powerful shock waves with each impact. The destructive force of each successive blast soon sent the Digimon skittering several meters across the ground, like a doll carelessly tossed aside. Fenri Lugamon readied its next attack, leaping through the air until it was right over its prey. It began to slash at Dorugoramon with the fiery beams that issued from its limbs. Jotunheim Gale! Eiji, you've brought out Fenri Lugamon. He did it. He made it to Mega level. Codecrackers and the Digipolice were diametrically opposed, but their leaders briefly put aside their differences and acknowledged the incredible skill of a fellow mind-linker. They knew what it felt like to be so locked in and determined that one was able to push through to the next level. This was all he ever wanted. To be on the winning team, Kosuke muttered. Since he'd lost so much in the real world, Yulin said, following the logic. He'd lost his parents, lived in a tiny apartment, and bounced from temp job to temp job. And here he is, fighting for his friend, Leon Alexander, a hacker no less, and the one who went DMIA. He does what he has to do, and he doesn't back down even when it costs him. He's got what it takes. Because it doesn't matter what it costs if you've got nothing to lose. That's why he's going up against the professor, Yulin reasoned. No hacker or codecracker would dare oppose a figure as prominent as Tomonori Ryusenji otherwise. A fair point. I wonder too if youth is his true strength. Why he's so willing to lay his life on the line in the fight for the digital world. If the digital world could change lives, then the battle was worth fighting if it meant changing his life in the digital world. It didn't hurt that his partner Digimon was right by his side. He decided a long time ago that he would live in the digital world and be a full-time codecracker. I think that was the moment he opened the door, not just to Lugamon's ultimate form, but their mega form as well. All he needed after that was a reason to walk through it, Kosuke mused. Kosuke and Yulin had every reason to hope. Eiji had what it took to win. Kosuke, meanwhile, had one last job to do. His story had come to the worst possible conclusion, but at least he could give his beloved sire a measure of peace. You were like that once, Yulin said, moving closer to Kosuke. Yeah, perhaps I was, Kosuke said quietly. All his life, he'd fought through the loss and confusion in the hopes that he'd get her back. Everything he did had been for her. We were all like that once. Now we just have to do what we can. It's okay. I needed to hear that. Thank you, Kosuke said, his breath ragged. He sighed heavily and took up the syringe once more. An intense flickering pillar of light emanating from the stone circle drew Dorugoramon and Fenri Lugamon's attention. What is that? Professor Ryosenji said skeptically, peering through Dorugoramon's eyes. Whatever it was, he couldn't help but feel it was important. Eiji, too, turned towards the stone circle. Eiji! A voice called out. It was Fenri Lugamon. It's them! The light continued to flicker. No. Pulse. Kosuke, did he administer the medicine? Eiji looked down inside the stone circle, but didn't see any sign of Kosuke or Tyrannomon. Still, he was certain of one thing. Kosuke hadn't given the medicine to the Black Agumon. He'd used it on Pulsemon. Pulsemon! Leon! Come back to us! Eiji screamed. Back in the D4 area of the DDL labs, a lazily beeping pulse picked up speed on one of the monitors. The Digimon linker on Leon Alexander's wrist flickered to life. The rhythmic thump of a heartbeat echoed throughout the source domain. A bolt of light shot out from the stone circle, charting a zigzag path through the air. Pulsemon! Eiji cried out with joy. Kosuke chose to revive Eiji and Lugamon's friend. You must be mistaking me for someone else, Pulsemon said, as they floated up to Fenri Lugamon's nose. Leon, your voice. It was like Leon and Pulsemon were speaking at the same time, their voices overlaid on one another. Ah, Lugamon! Hey, it is you! Hey, Eiji! The medicine produced a result consistent with its trials on Digimon and the results produced by AI simulations. It revived a DMIA patient, and yet something was different. The shot revived Leon's consciousness inside Pulsemon's Digicore, and now his ego is trying to restore his sense of self. He's actively trying to separate from Pulsemon. Fascinating, Ryosenji said, turning his attention away from the flight. How could he pass up the chance to observe real-time data about the first proper administration of his treatment to a DMIA patient? Are you Leon? Or Pulsemon? Eiji asked carefully. Both. It's hard to explain. Leon was still mind-linked, but couldn't himself tell where one of them ended and the other began. They communicated as one entity. Leon, the massive silver dragon said, attempting to insert themselves into the conversation. It's me, Tomonori Ryosenji. Professor, why are you in Dorugoramon's body? Leon and Pulsemon asked simultaneously. It's a long story. I'm taking the fight to the SOC by fighting Eiji here. He's one of their leaders now. It wasn't exactly a lie, but it elided a great many facts. You're fighting Eiji? Oh, never mind that now. How long have you been mind-linked? According to my readout, it looks like I still have plenty of time. That's rather impressive. We're on the other side of the gateway, in the depths of the digital world. This place in particularly is known as the source domain. Ah, there will be plenty of time to explain later. We mustn't let the code crackers steal this place from us. Don't listen to him, Leon. He's the one we need to be worried about, Eiji shouted. Pulsmon thought for a moment. They touched a talon on their chin, nodded, and snapped their talons. A moment later, their whole body began to spark and glow. They were digivolving. They tore through their champion form and morphed into their ultimate form, before transforming yet again. When the sparks subsided, Kazuchimon stood tall once more. How is this possible? Leon Alexander went DMIA. His timer ran out because he stayed mindling for too long. Yulin was dumbfounded. The DMIA recovery medication was originally developed with the goal of extending the amount of time one can remain mind-linked. We were just worried about the side effects, Kosuke explained. The drug worked, and Leon now had additional mind-linking time. Kosuke watched as the empty syringe was deleted from his hand. He had done all he could. But it sure seems like the hacker judge isn't suffering from any of them. And I'm betting he won't stand for his codecracker's behavior. Leon, remember that you are a hacker who will not abide any codecrackers. I understand it must hurt to discover that your childhood friend is your enemy. But you and Kazuchimon must join me in defeating him. Leon, no! Eiji yelled, gritting his teeth as he watched Kazuchimon swing around to stand beside Dodogoramon. Some people will trust who they trust, no matter how much you protest and try to convince them otherwise. Especially in high-stakes situations. Kazuchimon began concentrating all the nearby electrical energy into a single ball of pulse power, creating energy on par with a nuclear fusion reaction at the sun's very core. The entire projectile was highly compressed, ready to be fired out in a matter of nanoseconds. Shinden Shoraiko! Kazuchimon fired their attack, the very one that not even Machine Dramon was able to withstand. The blast made contact with a single outstretched limb, wholly unprepared for the strike. The impact of the blast shot straight into the Digicore, and Kosuke let out an unholy scream of pure anguish from beneath the stone circle's altar. Dodogoramon lowered its scorched arm and glared at Kazuchimon. This was the last thing Professor Ryosenji could have predicted. Leon, he said. His voice shot through with betrayal. Kosuke and Dodogoramon's sense of self-preservation had saved him. There was no way Professor Ryosenji's tools would have delivered the command to defend in time. Just as I thought, Professor. You can hit the legendary Tartarus partner Digimon with everything you have, but you still can't completely destroy it, Kazuchimon said as Dodogoramon dropped to its knees. Professor Ryosenji released his video projection from Dodogoramon once more, eager to show Leon and Kazuchimon his physical form. Why? Why would you do that? Professor Ryosenji demanded, intending to scold his pupil with a performance full of hurt bewilderment. It wasn't you who brought us back, but Tartarus, Kazuchimon said, remaining on the attack. They unleashed Boutmon-style punches that culminated in a swift kick to the stomach, doubling Dodogoramon over. Kazuchimon didn't stop attacking until Dodogoramon was laid out on the floor. And it was Eiji Nagasumi who came looking for us in the first place. Professor Ryosenji, meanwhile, sought to use Pulsmon as a prisoner. As leverage. Leon! Eiji shouted. Kazuchimon turned toward Fenrir Lugamon upon hearing one of their names. I heard the story, Eiji. Well, most of it. Leon and Kazuchimon sat as one. Their voices weren't gaining any separation. Suffice to say, Leon was broadly aware of the discussion that occurred once Professor Ryosenji warped Pulsmon into the source domain. The lack of separation between him and his Digimon were strange, though. It hadn't been all that long since he went DMIA. It was difficult to say if a small piece of his consciousness remained lodging in Pulsmon's Digicore, or if some other error had led to a of shared memory situation. And the hacker judge, a paragon of justice, would side with the codecracker? Is that what you mean to tell me? Professor Ryosenji said, appealing directly to Leon. I cannot abide codecrackers, Leon replied hesitantly. Quite right. The side effects of the medicine must have confused you. You've only just recovered from being DMIA after all. There must have been an error. Professor Ryosenji began, eager to win Leon over. My vital signs are normal, Leon replied, stopping the professor mid-sentence. What I truly cannot abide is this irritational loss of life in the digital world. What I cannot abide is a creature, human or Digimon, playing God with lives to which they have no claim. True justice lies in my heart. I have the strength of my convictions, and the sense of justice instilled in me as a hacker tells me that you, Professor Ryosenji, are the enemy. Kazuchimon drew a lightning-streaked blade and pointed it at the professor. Professor Ryosenji crossed the one line Leon had. He dared to meddle with Digimon's lives. You know how this ends, Leon Alexander. You'll lose everything. So be it! Justice demands it! I'm right here with you, Eiji said. At last, they were fighting side by side. I see you managed to digivolve Lugamon into their mega form. Also, we could come find you in the digital world, which I owe you an apology. It's my fault you went DMIA in the first place. I'm glad, Leon said with a sigh. You are? It's simple, really. Now that I see you here in Fenrir Lugamon's mega form, I know I can put my trust in you once more than the professor. Eiji chose to live and grow alongside Lugamon, forming a natural bond. Professor Ryosenji, on the other hand, commandeered Dorugoramon by force. He hadn't put in the work. Kazuchimon and Fenrir Lugamon opened up a secret channel where they could freely exchange code with one another without any visible logs. Dorugoramon rose to their feet, arm limp at their side, static and noise spilling from its wounds. Fenrir Lugamon and Kazuchimon stood beside one another, ready for battle. Eiji and Leon hololized themselves to engage with Professor Ryosenji one last time. Professor, Eiji said, staring directly into the old man's eyes, there's one big reason you lost my trust. He couldn't help but notice the professor's video feed was even fuzzier than before. And I don't suppose I can ask what that is? You aren't even here right now. But of course I am. Look, I'm here before you. Except you're not. You're not mindling to any of the Digimon here. You're safe and sound in the DDL labs because you're a coward who won't risk his life for the digital world. Well, you see, even with the SOC's firepower, there was less than 50% chance that they would reach the gateway and successfully crack it, let alone get past the Royal Knight. Now I loathe boredom, but I'm not the type to risk my life for a cheap thrill. I get it. Not worth it, when you think about it. However, Eiji began. No one who seeks safety and comfort can win out here, Professor Ryosenji, Leon said, in a rare moment of direct defiance. Well, I never thought I'd be lectured by my own students. Perhaps I've lost my edge. Yeah, could be, Eiji said with a shrug. And so the hand that feeds is twice bitten. What a day it's been. At this point, I'd take Kosuke and the Digipolice squad leader's word over yours. The word of the people who are actually mindling here, who I can see and who can see me. That goes for Leon, and above all, for Fenrir Lugamon, the best partner in the digital world. Eiji shouted, flashing the mega-level confidence and pride in his choice to remain a codecracker that allowed him to digivolve his partner to their final form. Do you wish to keep going down this road, Professor? Leon asked directly. Dorugoramon was down to one arm, and it would be a 2-on-1 fight. I can see the writing on the wall. There would be little point, Professor Ryosenji said through a thick veil of static. I agree, Leon replied. That was meant for you, the professor said. AJ and Leon tensed up, ready for a fight. They were wrong to let their guard down, especially against the world's foremost authority on the digital world. I have told you again and again that I have crushed upstarts like you before. You play by my rules, the professor bellowed, as another tree diagram split the heavens above the source domain. What's going on? Leon shouted. Something's happening at the altar, AG yelled. Have you forgotten that I have completely decrypted the data sector of the source domain? 1/3 of its power is already in my hands. The professor gloated, inputting the chain of commands he'd stockpiled. He was on his own journey, and he wasn't about to give up now. He'd fought long and hard, honing his wits in the digital world as he gained power and influence in the real world. Now he aimed to wield them both, and build a life in which he was king. I'm a busy man. I have no time to spare for anything beyond my research. I'll make the awesome power of the source domain mine, here and now, he continued. Behind him, Dorugoramon warped and contorted in awful new ways. Kosuke! Yulin shrieked as she watched him bend over backwards and drop to the ground. His eyes flew open, wild and wide, and he began convulsing. A moment later, he was still, having lost consciousness. Yulin called his name to no avail. There was only one thing that could cause such violent reactions. What's Ryosenji doing to the Digicore? Dorugoramon's body began to stretch and swell, its mantle straining and screeching as it tried to contain the burgeoning mass beneath. It looked as if something within Dorugoramon was trying to claw its way out. Their cells divided at such an absurd pace that the armor could no longer hold. Larger pieces began to crack, while others were flung from its body entirely. Copious amounts of data streamed into Dorugoramon from the massive tree on the ceiling of the source domain. Dorugoramon is downloading data directly from the source Digimon. Not even a Mega-level Digimon can handle that much. The professor's gonna kill them if he keeps it up. This was now a matter of life and death. All Digivolutions in the digital world were, to one extent or another, everything was a fight for survival in the digital world. This is bad, Fenri Lugamon. Let's go, Kazuchimon, Fenri Lugamon barked. AG, Leon, and their partner Digimon felt a sense of dread well up within them. They had to act. They charged toward their horrific new foe, ready to strike before it could form. Life was fragile, even for Digimon. Death was all too common in the digital world. For those who did not wish to die, however, there was another option. They could feed on the death of other Digimon in a bid to extend their own lives, and in so doing open up another phase of Digivolution. Death X Evolution.